Today's music legend, you should know, is the incredibly soulful and virtuosic Russian classical double bassist Rinat Ibragimov. He made the bass sound as graceful as a violin. He was born in Moscow in 1960, and as a young man started out playing the cello. But when he was in his teens, he switched to the bass, which is where he would make his mark on the music world. In the Moscow Conservatory, he studied with all the top teachers, of course, and he also studied conducting. So he was an incredibly well-trained musician with an amazing amount of natural talent. And soon he began winning competitions. He won the all-Soviet soloist competition, or something like this it was called. And then the Battistini competition, which was named after the great originator of virtuosic classical bass playing, Giovanni Battistini, 19th century Italian, very famous conductor, and the first really great bass virtuoso. Now, for all of you who are not familiar with classical bass virtuoso music, if you go to see an orchestra concert, you'll notice that the bass players, a lot of them, are moving their fingers very fast while they're playing with the bow. Unlike jazz bass players who usually play pizzicato, the walking bass line. Most of what classical bassists play is with the bow. So you're looking at these people and going, boy, they have a lot of technique. A lot of times they're doubling the cello lines, and cello lines can be very, very fast. And how come we don't hear more bass soloists? Well, the answer is that none of the great composers of the past who wrote all the famous concertos, Beethoven, Mozart, Tchaikovsky, Brahms, they didn't write a bass concerto. There's only one very famous short bass solo written by any famous composer. Mahler wrote one in his first symphony, just a little 16-bar melody. But believe me, there's a lot of bassists in symphony orchestras who have amazingly virtuosic techniques. They just don't get a chance to show it. Because the bass is such a low-pitched instrument, it's really hard for it to project over an orchestra. And in general, low-pitched instruments don't get their fair share of solo pieces written for them, unless somebody goes out of their way and commissions a piece. And that's what Battistini did. He wrote his own music for himself. If you looked carefully while he was playing, magnificently, of course, you'll notice that that bass only had 3 strings. And back in the 17th and 18th and 19th century, a lot of the basses only had 3 strings. And they were tuned in fourths, but they didn't go all the way down to the low E, because the bass tuning is E, A, D, G from the bottom to the top. So this was just A, D, G. And it requires a whole lot more shifting up and down the neck, which he did amazingly, because he wanted to perform this piece in the authentic way that Battistini performed it back in the 19th century. So in the clip you just saw, the bass was tuned up a whole step, B, E, A. Battistini wrote it in B minor, and tuned this way, the bass sound stands out better. And this is actually an original bass from the 18th century, I believe. I can't remember who made the bass, but it was very rare to find them still extant like that. The other famous bass concerto that was written was by the famous Russian conductor and bass virtuoso, Serge Koussevitzky, who later moved to America and conducted the Boston Symphony. So the other piece that I'm going to show you a little bit of right now was written by a Czech composer named Van Hal. And for this one, Rinat uses what's called the Viennese tuning. I knew nothing about this. This is A, D, F sharp, A. So it's got a third in it. And if you notice some of his bow crossings, he's playing chords, overtone chords. And I must mention to you another thing, that a lot of times when you hear classical bass soloists, they tune it up a whole step so that the bass has a brighter sound that cuts through a little bit better. Rinat Ibragimov was also a great teacher, and he got a job in 1995 as principal bass of the London Symphony Orchestra. So this made him move from Russia to England, and he was principal bass for 20 years there and taught at the Guildhall School of Music and the Royal Conservatory. He was a very inspiring teacher, and he also led the bass section in the London Symphony Orchestra. Now, as you notice when you're watching him perform in these videos, everything is memorized. This is really extraordinary because, of course, great soloists memorize the pieces that they have to perform. But most great famous soloists are not also leading a section in an orchestra, which requires flawless reading of things. Every week they have a different concert, and he's leading the section. He has to be leading and playing absolutely flawlessly and setting the example for the other bassists in the section. So this is another dimension of his incredible talent. I know I mentioned to you that he started as a cellist, and there's also a series of videos of him playing one of the Bach cello suites on bass, incredibly beautifully. And as I said, he was principal bass in the London Symphony from 1995 to 2014, when unfortunately he suffered a career-ending stroke. But he did continue teaching at the Guildhall School part-time until 2020, when he passed away from COVID. So a very sad ending to a very great career, wonderful, inspirational musician. And thank God he recorded all these amazing pieces that you can watch, these incredible videos with great pianists too. And he made an album when he was still in Russia with a phenomenal pianist named Elena Filanova. And that album is on Spotify, and I have added the whole album to my Spotify playlist for you to listen to. It's absolutely fantastic. Everything he played was fantastic. Rinat Ibragimov, someone you should definitely check out.